you can see from 20 feet, then you have what is called 20/20 vision, which means that you have normal vision. Nearsighted can see close but cannot see far. And so what happens here is that the eye is elongated. So distant objects are brought into focus in front of the retina. And a way to correct this is basically by wearing concave lenses. And what happens here is that they spread the light, so the image focuses on the retina. If you are farsighted, then that means you cannot see objects that are close. So what happens here is that the eye is shorter. So close objects are focused behind the retina. And so a way to correct this is if you wear convex lenses. And so what happens here is that increases bending of light, so the image focuses on the retina. Astigmatism. So either the cornea or the lens is uneven, creating a fuzzy image, and this can be corrected by uneven lenses. So now let's talk about the ear. So the ear is very interesting because it has two purposes. One of them, it allows to detect sound or to hear. The second one, it allows to balance or to maintain equilibrium. So the sensory receptors for both of them are located in the inner ear, which is the middle part of the ear. So these are the hair cells. These hair cells actually have what are called stereocilia, which are kind of like hair-like projections. So the stereocilia acts as mechanoreceptors. So the ear has three divisions: the outer, the middle, and the inner ear. So the outer ear consists of the pinna and the auditory canal. So the auditory canal is lined with hairs and also with sweat glands that secrete earwax. So the purpose of the earwax is to protect us against foreign matter. So it's actually serving a protective role. So the middle ear begins at the tympanic membrane, or also known as the eardrum. So this kind of vibrates whenever there's like pressure. And it also consists of two small openings. One of them is called the oval window, and the second one is called the round window. So there you also find three small bones known as ossicles. So the first small bone is called the malleus or the hammer, and so that touches the tympanic membrane. And then you have the incus, also known as ape, and then the stapes, also known as sclera. And that's the one that touches the oval window. The auditory tube, also known as Eustachian tube or pharyngotympanic, connects the middle ear to the nasopharynx, and the purpose of that is to equalize pressure across the tympanic membrane. So whereas the outer ear and the middle ear contain air, the inner ear contains a fluid. So it actually contains three areas: the semicircular canals and the vestibules. Those are responsible for balance, and the cochlea. So that's the organ that is responsible for detecting sound. The way we detect sound is sound waves strike the tympanic membrane and it makes it vibrate. So this causes the vibration of the malleus, incus, and stapes, so the three small bones. So the purpose of those bones is to amplify the vibration. So the stapes strikes the oval window, causing it to vibrate. So this passes the pressure to the fluid within the cochlea, and in the cochlea we actually have those hair cells. So the cochlea has three canals: the spiral organ or the organocorti. Corti. So this is the organ that is responsible for hearing. It is located within the cochlear canal. So you also have the basilar membrane. So the basilar membrane moves up and down. If you guys remember, the inner ear, we have liquid there. So whenever it moves up and down, that's going to cause the bending of the stereocilia of the hair cells. So the hair cells are located within the tectorial membrane. And so whenever those hair cells or the stereocilia actually bend, then we create nerve signals. And these nerve signals are going to travel to the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. And in there, they're going to be interpreted as sound. Each part of the spiral organ is sensitive to different wave frequencies, also known as pitch. So the tip of the spiral organ is responsible for low pitches, whereas the base is responsible for higher pitches. So the nerve fibers from each region lead to different areas of the auditory cortex. What we know as volume is the function of amplitude or the strength of the sound waves. So loud noises causes the fluid within the vestibular canal to exert more pressure and the basilar membrane to vibrate to a greater extent. So the resulting increase in stimulation is interpreted by the brain as volume. The vestibular nerve originates in the semicircular canal, the succle and the utricle. So what happens here is that they take signals to the brainstem and the cerebellum. Now there's also other structures in the body that are also important for the sense of equilibrium. For example, the eyes and the proprioceptors. The rotational equilibrium is handled by mechanoreceptors within the semicircular canal. So there is one in each dimension of space. So at the base or the ampulla, it contains hair cells, and those stereocilia are embedded within the cupula. So each ampule responds to head rotation in different planes of space, so you're all covered essentially. So let's talk about how do we maintain equilibrium. So as fluid within the semicircular canal flows over in the space of the capilla, the stereocilia are bent. And so what happens here is that the vestibular nerve carries signals generated here to the brain, and that causes basically a change in the body. So appropriate motor output to various skeletal muscles correct the body's position in space as needed. So once again, what happens here is that you actually have the bending of the stereocilia within the hair cells, and that sends nerve impulses that are carried to the brain, and that basically tells the body, okay, you need to shift this position in order to maintain equilibrium. But what about gravitational equilibrium? So this is handled by two membranous sacs, the utricle and the saccule. So they're located near the semicircular canals. So both of them contain hair cells. So the stereocilia are embedded within the outer ligament membrane. The outer ligament are calcium carbonate granules that rest on this membrane. So the utricle is especially sensitive to horizontal movements, and the saccule is responsible for vertical movements. So when you're still, the outer legs rest on the outer leg membrane above the hair cells. However, when the body moves either in the horizontal or the vertical position, the outer legs are displaced. So the outer leg membrane sags, bending the stereocilia of the hair cells beneath them. So if the stereocilia are bended towards the larger stereocilium, also known as the kinocilium, so the nerve impulses are going to increase in the vestibular nerve. If the stereocilia move away from the kinocilium, so the nerve impulses are going to decrease. So the frequency of nerve impulses in the vestibular nerve indicates the movement up or down.